back to the Technology Innovation Hub. It's going to be the 27th session under Oracle Architectural Journey. Let me share the screen. In the previous hands-on, we got to know how Oracle assigns SCN numbers per transaction. And in this session, let's continue further to understand how these things are going to work across multiple sessions. Now, in the last practical, we were working in the single session. So let's try to get several sessions and see how the SCNs are going to handle. Fine. Now for that, I'm going to go to the command line environment this time. Plus, I'm going to use the GUI as well. Let's use both environments, SQL Developer and the command line. So let me just show you my environment. So at the moment here I have logged in as HR. I have HR user, and there's a table I have already created, just a table with one column API. And if you just describe API, just a table is single column, and that's okay. I'm in HR there. And there's another session. This session is sys. Yeah, this is sys, and I have another session. This one, yes. Oh, this one is system. Yes, should be system. I have logged in as system. So likewise, there are three sessions: HR, system and sys. Both are active at the moment. Now what I'm trying to do here, let me take this query first. Let's copy it and paste. Let's go here, GUI environment. Now what it's trying to do, select XID, transaction ID. Because there are two tables, $, section and $, transaction. So these are two major tables for us to get an idea about the ongoing transactions. So I'm using $, transactions to get the details about the transactions, and $, session to link it up with the sessions. There are three sessions now. There are three users are running. And I'm taking XID, transaction ID, B, that is from $, transaction. I'm taking start system chain number base, that is the CN actually, and I'm taking undo segment number XID per the transaction. What is the undo segment number? You can see as undo segment. Transaction slot I am taking as transaction slot. We understand this thing, what do you mean by these columns. And again a sequence within the slot, what is the sequence, and we have status of the transaction, whether it's active or not running, and likewise transaction as transaction is status. And we are going to have further undo block sequence. The slot sequence is different and undo block sequence is separate, and we are going to have undo block. Yes, session ID we are going to have a.sid is there, and the username. So session ID and username both are being taken from $, session. This is block address. Let's check that one. B dot undo block. Yeah, address undo block. It should be undo block. BLK. Yeah. So we can take a look at these columns from $, transaction. If you go to $, transaction, so let's go to $, transaction. These are the columns. Thing is here, $, transaction. Yeah, this is a table. $, transaction. This is from 19C. But the only thing is, it doesn't explain just the column definition. So we are going to deal with this. This one XID USA undo segment number. So within the segment we have extents, within the extent we have block. So this is going to be the undo segment number. Slot number, this is slot number, and we have the sequence. I think you may remember this slot number, that's why here is not explained, but I think in the note I have explained it. The slot number, you have the slot hash, the sequence and all the record inside the slot. That's true. You may remember that we learned something called IT interested transaction list. This was explained in one of the previous sessions. Now, interested transaction list is what? You may remember our records are within the block. Every records are within the block, that is smallest data transfer unit. Whenever there is a modification going to take place for that particular record within the block, Oracle maintains what's going to happen to that particular record in the block in the header part of the block. So, it's maintained in an area called interested transaction list, that is known as ITL. But we need to understand the block details later. For the time being, let me just show you. This will be covered in more detail under on the storage structures and segment management. Logical storage structures, we will discuss this thing. But here we have the block. Here we talk about the data blocks and operating system blocks. We have a particular structure per block. Now, this one actually it doesn't give you more detail, but if you go down, you can see block has pre-space, usage space, init trans, max trans. There are a lot of information within the block, the header part of the block. And if you go further, those things are explained. This is raw format and all. And you can see for our explanation, there's another important 2 points, that is init trans and max trans, and the percentage free and percentage use. Percentage use is for the number of inserts possible for the block, percentage free for the updates possible for the block. And we have another 2 things called init trans and max trans. Let me just show you. I think it should be here. Here we have. We can search it, but I can tell you init trans is the number of transactions allowed initially in the interested transaction block, interested transaction list, ITL. Maximum is the upper limit. So, we will go to more detail within the in the future. We will be explaining the logical structure. So, that we will go to more detail, but this is just to get an idea what's the blocks look like. So, there are internal segments, internal components within the block. Now, if you take, okay, let's go back here. Now, let's say this is a block. Now, inside the block there is a row. Our row is located or sitting inside the block now. Now, at the header part of the block, there you have some interested transaction list, ITL, this one, ITL, interested transaction list, that is in the header part of the block. So, it will maintain what's happening to the record within the block, that's what. So, that is what is explained there in the note. To maintain those information, it need to keep the track of the sequence of the transaction, and it need to keep the track of the slot within the block, what in which slot. So, it is keeping the track of the particular transaction, because it needs to get the exact unique identification for the transaction. And this transaction ID, here we have the XID, this one. This transaction ID is nothing much the combination of these things. The block number, you have this one, slot number and the sequence number. These are included, slot number and the sequence number, these are included for this particular transaction ID. It's a unique number. So, let's do the practical, then you will understand more detail. And that is what is explained here. You can see Oracle keep the track of the row that are located per transaction in a storage area at the top of each data block called interested transaction list. So, that's what I mentioned. The header part of the block, top of the block, we have this ITL, interested transaction list. 2 parameters, init trans and max trans, control the number of ITL slots in the block for an object within the Oracle. That's true, because records are belongs to maybe table, maybe whatever object. In the block, it maintains ITL, and in ITL, 2 parameters, init trans will determine, control the number of slots initially, and the max is the upper limit. So, how many number of slots initially possible and what is the maximum number of slot possible. Actually, it determines the maximum number of transaction possible initially, and what is the upper limit for the number of transaction which can happen within that particular block. That's what init trans and max trans. So, we can define these parameters when we are creating a table actually, but we can let it to manage automatic as well, depends on our requirement. And segment space, block management, auto, and those parameters are there, but let's not go there for the time being. Yeah, and init trans contain the total number of slots initially created when it is first used. That's true. maximum parameter sets the upper bound, that's what, total number of interested transaction list for the block. As such, each transaction that plans to modify database block will require new slots, that's what. Whenever the modification happen, it require a new slot. So that's the slot number we are talking here. We have, you can see the slot number, transaction slot number within the ITL, interested transaction list, that means within the block actually. So we have the sequence as well. Within the, here we have the slot, the sequence or record inside the slot. So this is nothing much, just to keep the track of the transaction, to have the XID, the unique transaction ID. And that's what it says. The max trans parameter also set the upper limit for the number of concurrent transactions that may active any given, that's a single point in time, how many concurrently possible, parallelly how many transactions can occur for that particular block. Okay, so I hope you got the idea theoretically. So let's do the practical, because first of all you need to understand these columns, what does it mean, that's why I just explained that one. And in the document I have given the definitions actually. Address, we are not using address actually, but I have given undo segment number, slot number, sequence of record inside the slot. So I will be uploading these documents for you to repair. So let's do this. Now when I run, if I run this query at the moment, so I don't have any transactions ongoing. At the moment is nothing. I haven't done any lockings, any DMS, nothing. So let me initiate one. Now I am going to initiate from here on the command line under system. Okay, let me insert this. I can use any transaction, this doesn't matter, but for this particular table I am going to insert a record. Okay, insert, no commit, I didn't commit. Now let's see what's going to happen. Now if you just, if you notice, it tracked that particular transaction. Under system, there is a transaction going on per table, one record, there's a lock there, insert. So now what's going, it details transaction ID, and if you just notice, not only the system session, now the transaction happened on system session now, but rest of the active sessions, now HR is active and sys is active, so these are additional sessions for sys, and for them also the same information is given, the SCN. See, the same SCN is given for others as well, because the transaction is ongoing, it is neither commit no rollback, it is on the progress at the moment. Transaction is in progress at the moment. In the, you can see the undo segment is also there. Undo segment is the same segment, that is for rollback purpose. If you notice the slot number, see the slot number within the block, the slot number, and the sequence within the block, the sequence, and transaction is active. So this is undo block sequence, that's a separate sequence for rollback purpose, that is undo blocks are separate. Now the table is having the transaction blocks for the records. Undo, just because of this DML command, it needs to maintain a separate undo. That's why undo, separate undo sequence is there, separate undo block address is there, and this is the SID. So that is per transaction. You can see it is using the same SCN for the rest of the sessions as well. Now let's do something like this. Now I am going to do another update in a different session. Now this time HR. So let's run this whatever transaction, that's okay, whatever, no commits at the moment. System is running one transaction, another transaction, two sessions. Just a transaction, insert one record for another table, another new table which is on HR schema, different session. Now let's try this one again, and if you just notice now what happened. Again for that transaction in a different session, Oracle assign a new, this is for HR, you can see new SCN number, and again a new set of undo segments, slot, sequence, like that, but distributing across all the remaining sessions, same information, transaction is active. But the nice thing to notice is it is assigning a new SCN number because it is in a different session. So hope you are getting the information. Now this is all for you to understand how these SCNs are working across the sessions as well, and how these slot number, sequence number, undo, this is a different things. Undo segments are handled separately, and in the ITL, interested transaction list, ongoing blocks where the records are maintained, those things are happening, those things are maintained separately, because these things are there in the database buffer cache. Undo segments also there in the database buffer cache, but it is undo. I mean, we have a separate table space for undo. Now this is for ongoing changes, the dirty blocks, dirty buffers, because transition is not committed yet. It is in the mid of a ongoing transition, active transition. Right. So that is and that, and so what we can do, okay, now if you commit one of those things, let's commit one of those things. I have committed HR session, and if you just run this one again, now see it is released. It has been released because it's commit, transitions over, and it has been removed from here, and now still remaining the SCN for our other transition which is under system schema. So even if you commit that one, go back here and our system schema, this one, if you commit here, that also should get released. Now everything back to normal. Definitely these commits, Oracle is going to assign a new SCN there. That we understood in the previous session. Okay, so that's the explanation. Actually, I just wanted to demonstrate here in this session, and block information and window transition table and this ILT and the sequence numbers within the slot number and likewise. So those things. Fine, hope you got the idea. I will meet you in the next session. We will do one more practical in SCN in the next session, so that we can finish the SCN information and the details. I think we got a proper idea now about SCN behavior. Then we can move into checkpoints. Fine, I will meet you back in the next session. Have a great time. Bye bye.